over the years, I have heard it said a lot of times, maybe in different ways, but something like this: the Bible doesn't say much about marriage. You got Genesis 1 and 2, Song of Solomon. Jesus says a couple things. He went to a wedding. Ephesians 5, 1 Peter 3, a couple more. And they say at the end of the day, with a book this big, the Bible doesn't give much instruction to married couples. I think if you think like this, then that's a dangerous perspective. If you think that the only instruction God gives to married couples is when he's explicitly talking to married couples, then it's likely that you're going to wrongly interpret the passages when he's talking to married couples. If you didn't understand that, let me explain. While the Bible might not explicitly give us a lot of instruction for how husbands and wives are to relate to one another, the Bible gives us a ton of instruction on how we are to relate to our fellow humans. In fact, we group this instruction, at least in the New Testament, we group it together by a phrase that all these verses share in common, which is one another. The one another's are all over the New Testament, and these one another's are meant to instruct us into how we are to relate to fellow humans. Let me give a few examples just from 1 Peter alone. From a pure heart, love one another constantly. Above all, maintain constant love for one another, since love covers a multitude of sins. Be hospitable to one another without complaining. Just as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another. All of you clothe yourselves with humility toward one another. This is just a sampling of one another's in 1 Peter. They're all over the New Testament, and they're intended to instruct us on how we relate to fellow humans. So, friends, here's the news flash. You ready? When you got married, and if someday you get married, lots of things will change, right? But one thing that remains the same is that you and your spouse are still human. Now, that's a little bit funny, but I'm serious. I think that some spouses need to look and say, you are my human husband. You are my human wife. Let me just put it very clearly. And look, this is one reason why people butcher text on marriage, because they don't understand that when you get married, you both remain human. And what this means is that God's commands for everyone are included in his commands for your special one. Let me say it another way. Husbands and wives, you are expected to one another your one and only. Therefore, if you ever find yourself coming to interpret an interpretation about a marriage text that clearly contradicts the way God has told you to treat everyone, you haven't understood it rightly. And I think this is one of the saddest realities of the Christian church. You have husbands and wives who act like their spouses aren't human. What I mean is that they build a marriage based on clearly defined biblical roles, yet no one would describe your relationship as Christ-like or Christian. The biblical vision for husbands and wives is not that the few passages about marriage replace all of God's commands for how you treat everyone. They're meant to be placed on top of them. Think about this. Husbands and wives, you don't take the one another's out in the community and arrive back home at night and take those one another's and place them on the porch and then walk into your one and only. No, you bring the one another's inside with you. Those who don't one another their one and only, it results in spouses who wish they could be treated like the client you're trying to woo, the neighbor you're trying to impress, the community group member you're serving in hopes they'll come back. And this shouldn't be. Hopefully you feel my passion on this. This is wrecking Christian marriages. The first perspective we bring to this passage and any passage on marriage is that any instruction God gives about how you treat your one and only includes the one another's. It doesn't exclude it. The second perspective we bring